She grew up in the red dirt country of West Texas, where the heat shimmers off the ground by 9 in the morning and the horizon never seems to end. Her name was Tessa Marchetti, and she was the only daughter of a Vietnam War veteran who had never spoken more than 5 consecutive sentences about his time in uniform. What he did give her was a Remington 700 bolt action that was older than she was, a box of .308 cartridges, and one piece of instruction delivered not as praise, but as simple fact. You hit what you look at. By the time she was 12, she could judge windage by the way the mesquite leaves trembled. By 15, she could field dress a buck before the blood cooled. The boys at school called her Deer Camp, snickering behind their palms. They didn't understand why a girl would spend her weekends belly down in the scrub, breathing in dirt and jackrabbit scat, when she could be at the mall or the movies. What they didn't see, what nobody saw, was the stillness she found there. The way the world simplified through a scope. In that circle of glass, there was no high school gossip, no father who woke up screaming, no aching awareness that her mother had left one Tuesday afternoon and never come back. There was only the crosshair and the breath. After graduation, the recruiters came to her high school like carnival barkers. The Army guy had glossy brochures featuring tanks. The Navy talked about seeing the world. The Air Force offered technical training. Tessa walked past them all and stopped at the table draped in forest green, where a gunnery sergeant with a shaved head and a neck the circumference of a fire hydrant was quietly reading a worn paperback. He didn't look up when she approached. She waited, 30 seconds, a minute. Finally, he closed the book, slowly, deliberately, and met her eyes. "What do you want?" he asked, not rude, testing. "I want to be a Marine," she said. "Women don't become Marines. Women become female Marines. There's a difference. I don't care what they call it. I want the rifle." He studied her the way she studied a ridgeline. Later, she would learn that Gunnery Sergeant Callahan had been a scout sniper in Fallujah, that he had 37 confirmed kills and a silver plate in his skull. Later, she would learn that he never recommended anyone. But that day, he slid a business card across the table. It had no name, no email, just a phone number and a single word: Quantico. "Basic training doesn't start for 6 months," he said. "Between now and then, you run, every day. You don't stop when your side stitches. You don't stop when you puke. You puke. You keep running. You don't get faster. You don't bother showing up." She ran. Through the frozen January mornings when her eyelashes crystallized. Through the February dust storms that scoured her cheeks raw. She ran until the shin splints became stress fractures and the doctor ordered her to stop. She stopped for 3 days, then wrapped her legs in ace bandages and ran again. Her father never asked where she was going, but he started leaving glasses of water on the porch, condensation beating on the rim, waiting for her when she limped home. When she arrived at Paris Island, she was 5'6", 128 pounds. And with shoulders corded like rope, and a gaze that made even the male drill instructors hesitate before they got in her face. They tried harder. They got louder. They made her the guide-on carrier, the heaviest billet, because they assumed her arms would give out before the male recruits did. Her arms didn't give out. She carried that flag through the swamps and the gas chamber and the obstacle course, and when the male recruits dropped for push-ups, she was still standing, still holding the colors, still staring straight ahead. On the rifle range, she qualified expert on her very first attempt. The range master, a gunnery sergeant with 20 years of service, pulled her target down and held it up to the light. 20 rounds. 20 bullet holes clustered so tightly that the paper was torn through in the center. and a ragged hole no larger than a silver dollar. He looked at the target. He looked at her. He looked at the target again. "Who taught you to shoot like this?" he asked. "Nobody," she said. "I just looked at it." That was the moment the scout snipers heard her name. It traveled through the unofficial channels, the chow hall whispers, the armorer who noticed she never needed a second confirmation on her zero, the corporal who spotted her at 0500 doing static holds with a 12-pound water jug duct taped to her rifle barrel. The platoon sergeant for Scout Sniper Platoon, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, pulled her personnel file. Female, 5'6", no prior law enforcement, no Olympic shooting pedigree, no family legacy of military service beyond a silent father who drank coffee on the porch at dawn. On paper, she was nothing special, but the target didn't lie. The invitation came via runner. Tessa was in the squad bay, polishing her boots with a kiwi tin and a Bic lighter, when a lance corporal handed her a folded note. It bore no official letterhead, just a time, a grid coordinate on base, and a question mark. She arrived at the designated location, a concrete maintenance shed behind the armory, to find 5 men waiting. They were not in formation. They leaned against the walls, arms crossed, expressions ranging from bored to openly hostile. These were the platoon's senior snipers, the hunters of gunmen, men with multiple combat deployments and ghillie suits that smelled of sweat and camouflage wax. The one in the center, a stocky staff sergeant with eyes the color of shale, was cleaning his fingernails with the tip of a Kabar knife. "Marchetti," he said. Not a question. "Staff sergeant, you know why you're here? I assume you're going to tell me?" Someone snorted. The staff sergeant's knife paused. "We have a slot, 1 slot, 3 candidates, 2 male infantrymen with combat arms backgrounds and expert pistol and rifle quals. And you." He waited for her to flinch. She didn't. "The other 2 are currently running the obstacle course. Their time to beat is 6 minutes, 40 seconds. You want to try?" She was still wearing her combat boots. "The obstacle course at Pendleton is not a recreational facility. The cargo net sags with age and the rope burns through calluses. The walls are 8 feet high and splintered." Tessa did not stretch. She did not psych herself up. She walked to the starting line, nodded once, and began to move. She was not the fastest, and a female pelvis is structurally different. Her stride length was shorter, her center of gravity lower, but she did not slow at the obstacles that made the others hesitate. She hit the mud pit already swimming. She scaled the rope using only her arms, legs trailing uselessly behind a recent stress reaction in her tibia. When she reached the final stretch, lungs burning, vision tunneling, she did not think about the men watching. She thought about the February dust storms. She thought about her father's water glass, waiting. She crossed the line at 6 minutes 52 seconds, 12 seconds behind the leading male candidate. Staff Sergeant Hale, the man with the knife, did not comment on her time. He wrote something in a small notebook, folded it shut, and looked at her. "Tomorrow, 0400. Don't be late." The other 2 candidates were named Kowalski and Dietz. Kowalski was a stocky corporal from Chicago who could bench press 275 and had a wife pregnant with their first child. Dietz was a lanky sergeant from the Florida Panhandle, quiet to the point of muteness, who had already completed 1 tour in Ramadi and spoke of it only in his sleep. They regarded Tessa with the confusion of men who have been told they must now compete against a mathematics error. "You ever actually fire a M40? Dietz asked on the first morning as they stood in the pre-dawn chill, waiting for the instructors. "No." "You know the effective range?" 700 meters point target, 1,000 area target. "You memorized that from a book?" Yes. Kowalski laughed, but it wasn't cruel. More like the laugh of a man who has just realized the poker game includes a wild card he didn't account for. The screening was 2 days of systematic demolition. They ran with 70-pound packs until their shoulders bled through their uniforms. They swam in full combat gear, water flooding their nostrils, instructors screaming at them from the pool deck. They navigated by map and compass through terrain that all looked identical, slept 3 hours total across 48, and were woken not by alarms, but by thunder flashes detonated inches from their heads. By the evening of the second day, Dietz had developed a fever of 102. Kowalski had vomited twice and was running on pure spite. Tessa was not less tired. She was not immune to pain. But she had learned, and across 19 years of existing in a body, the world constantly told her was insufficient, to partition her mind away from her body. The body was a machine. Machines broke down. Machines overheated, but the operator, the self that existed behind the eyes, could keep functioning even when the machine was failing. Her father had taught her that, in the only way he knew how. You don't stop. You puke. You keep running. When the screening ended, Staff Sergeant Hale gathered them in the armory. His face revealed nothing. Kowalski. Your land nav was off by 400 meters. You're a fucking bulldog, but bulldogs can't read maps. You're out. Kowalski's jaw tightened. He nodded once, sharply, and walked out. He would not look at Tessa. Dietz, you've got a fever and you're hacking up a lung. But your stalking score was second highest in the group. You're in, on probation. Don't die before Monday. Dietz blinked, processed, nodded. Hale turned to Tessa. His face remained impassive. Marchetti, you passed. The silence stretched. Dietz looked between them, waiting for the catch. Tessa waited too. Don't look so surprised, Hale said. You can shoot. You can navigate. You don't whine. That's the baseline. The hard part starts now. If you cry, if you quit, if you fail a single academic test or shoot below 90% on any qualification, you're gone. And I don't care how good your goddamn deer hunting story is. I understand, she said. One more thing. He leaned forward slightly. The platoon commander didn't want you. He thinks women in the infantry is a social experiment that's going to get people killed. I told him I'd evaluate you fairly and report back. This is me evaluating. Don't make me a liar. He dismissed them. Tessa walked out into the California night, the air cool and smelling of eucalyptus. She found a bench near the empty parade deck and sat down. Her hands were shaking. She clasped them together, pressed them between her knees, and stared up at the stars. The same stars that had hung over West Texas, over her father's porch, over every cold morning she had run when everything in her screamed to stop. She had passed. The hard part was only beginning. The 4-week local training course was not designed to teach men how to be snipers. It was designed to break men who mistakenly believed they already were. Tessa quickly learned that everything she thought she knew about shooting was merely the alphabet, and then the instructors were demanding she write a novel. Week 1 was fundamentals, but not fundamentals as she understood them. Staff Sergeant Hale stood before a whiteboard and drew a diagram of the human respiratory system, annotated with range calculations. You will not shoot between heartbeats, he announced. That's Hollywood bullshit. Your heart pounds, your chest moves, your crosshair dances. You don't fight the dance. You learn the rhythm. You fire in the fraction of stillness between the beats. He made them lie prone for 4 hours, dry firing, not a single round discharged, while he walked among them and kicked the soles of their boots if he detected so much as a micro-flinch. Tessa had always shot by instinct. The same way she had always known, without calculation, how many clicks to adjust for a deer at 200 yards. And now she was required to articulate that instinct in mathematical terms, MOA milliradians, cosine angle for uphill/downhill shots. The Coriolis effect, which she had assumed applied only to missiles and weather systems, not to a half-ounce piece of copper traveling at 2,700 feet per second. She stayed up nights in the barracks, redlining her study guide, tracing ballistic curves in the margins. Dietz, bunking above her, would occasionally lean over and correct her math without comment. Week 2 was stalking and fieldcraft. This was the domain of Sergeant First Class Ortega, a compact Puerto Rican with over a decade in the scout sniper community and a resting expression of profound disappointment. "Ghillie suits," he announced on the first morning, gesturing to a pile of burlap and twine, "are not costumes. You are not playing Army. Your ghillie is your face. If your face is ugly, you die." They built their suits from scratch, cutting jute twine into 6-inch lengths, shredding burlap sacks, dyeing strips of fabric in mud and dark green RIT dye. The process took 18 hours across 3 days. Tessa's fingertips were raw and bleeding by the end. Ortega inspected each suit personally. When he reached Tessa, he paused, ran his fingers over her attachment pattern, looked at her. "Who taught you to break up the shoulder line?" "Nobody." He grunted, moved on. Later, Dietz leaned close. "He's never done that before." The pause. "He usually just fails people." The stalk exercise took place in the rolling hills of the base training area, 1,000 acres of chaparral and live oak. The objective: move undetected across 6 kilometers of open terrain. I'd establish a hide position within 200 meters of the observation point and remain unseen for 4 hours while instructors with 20 by 60 spotting scopes attempted to detect you. Tessa moved on her belly, inch by inch, her ghillie snagging on manzanita. A rattlesnake coiled 3 feet from her elbow, rattling a warning. She did not flinch. She did not retreat. She waited 17 minutes for the snake to uncoil and slide away, then resumed her crawl. At the 4-hour mark, Ortega's voice crackled over her earpiece. "Hide compromised. You're dead." She had been visible for exactly 3 seconds when a shaft of late-afternoon sunlight caught the reflection of her scope lens. 3 seconds. In combat, 3 seconds was a death sentence. She did not cry. She did not argue. And she simply began the 6-kilometer crawl back to the start point to try again. Week 3 was the mission exercise. Inserted 6 kilometers from a mock enemy command post, Tessa and Dietz were tasked with observing and reporting troop movements without detection. They moved at night, navigating by infrared and the faint glow of Dietz's red lens flashlight. At 0300, Tessa's foot broke through a crust of decayed log and plunged into a hidden cavity. The pain was immediate and electric, her ankle twisting, the sickening sensation of ligament stretching beyond its limit. She did not cry out. She did not even gasp. She simply withdrew her foot, tested the joint, and continued moving. By dawn, the ankle was the size of a softball. Dietz noticed her favoring it during their approach to the hide site. He said nothing, and he simply redistributed their shared equipment, taking the heavier radio pack without asking. They established their hide, a shallow depression beneath a fallen oak, covered with local vegetation and a thermal blanket. For 36 hours, they lay motionless, trading observation shifts, reporting the scripted movements of role-playing enemy forces. Tessa's ankle throbbed constantly. She did not remove her boot. She did not request extraction. When the exercise concluded and the instructors approached their position, Staff Sergeant Hale looked at her, at the way she was careful not to put weight on her right foot, at the sweat beading on her forehead despite the mild temperature. "Medical tent," he said. "Now!" The diagnosis was a severe high ankle sprain, 2 torn ligaments, and a stress reaction in the fibula. The corpsman wanted to medically drop her from the course. Tessa stared at the wall for a long moment. Then she asked for a compression sleeve, 2 ace bandages, and a promise that the corpsman would not report her status to the platoon leadership for 72 hours. "They'll find out eventually," the corpsman said. "Eventually isn't now." She returned to the training site with her ankle tightly wrapped, her gait almost normal, her jaw set. Dietz looked at her. He looked at the ace bandages visible above her boot line. He did not ask. He simply handed her his canteen and said, "Day 4, 1,000-yard known distance. You ready?" Week 4 was the culmination. Range 117, Camp Pendleton. A firing line overlooking a valley studded with steel targets at measured intervals. 200 yards, 300, 5, 8, 1,000. And the M40A1 bolt-action rifle weighed 14.5 pounds unloaded. It had a wooden stock, a heavy barrel, and a Unerdal 10-power scope that had been in continuous service since the 1960s. It was not a precision instrument by modern standards. It was a tool. Tessa handled it with the reverence she had once reserved for her father's Remington. The qualification course was unforgiving. 20 rounds. Unknown distances, unknown wind conditions. Shooters were evaluated not only on hits but on time to first-round downrange and consistency of shot placement. Tessa settled into position, her bound ankle angled awkwardly beneath her. She breathed. She found the rhythm, the swell of her chest, the pause at the apex, the fraction of stillness. The first target appeared at 300 yards. She fired. The steel rang. Target 2, 400 yards. Hit. On target 3, 600. Hit. At 800 yards, the wind shifted, gusting left to right at nearly 12 miles per hour. She calculated the adjustment, 2.5 minutes of angle, maybe 3, made the correction, and fired. The steel rang faintly, almost a whisper at that distance. Hit. The 1,000-yard target was a silhouette barely visible through the mirage waves rising from the heated valley floor. Tessa's ankles screamed, her vision tunneled. She remembered the rattlesnake, the sleepless nights, her father's water glass on the porch. She breathed. The crosshair steadied. She fired. The spotter beside her, a senior sniper named Corporal Reyes, lowered his scope. He looked at her. He did not smile, but his voice, when he spoke, carried a respect he had not offered before. Impact confirmed. A center mass. The final test was not marksmanship, but the culmination of everything that had come before. A live-fire stalk exercise combining stalking, observation, and a single decisive shot. Tessa was inserted at dawn, 5 kilometers from her target. A hostile role player, positioned in a 3-story concrete building. Her objective, approach undetected, identify the target, and neutralize with a single round. She moved through the scrub like smoke, her injured ankle now numb with pain and adrenaline. She built her hide in a depression so shallow that her spine was exposed to the sky, trusting her ghillie to break her outline. For 2 hours, she waited, watching the target through her scope. He moved periodically between windows, never pausing long enough for a clean shot. She did not grow impatient. She did not shift position. She simply waited, her breathing slow, her heartbeat a distant percussion. At 0947, the target stopped at the center window, lighting a cigarette. The flame was momentary. It was enough. Tessa's round passed through the window and struck the silhouette directly in the sternum. The echo of the shot rolled across the valley. Over her earpiece, a single word from Staff Sergeant Hale. Cease. She had passed. The ceremony was not a ceremony. There was no applause, No handshake from the battalion commander, no certificate suitable for framing. Tessa simply reported to the Scout Sniper platoon hut the following Monday and found her name added to the duty roster. A senior sniper handed her a set of locker's keys, a radio call sign assignment sheet, and a worn copy of the platoon's unofficial operating procedures. And the call sign was printed in block letters on standard issue paper, no different from anyone else's. Desert Serpent. She looked at the words. She thought of West Texas, of the rattlesnakes that sunned themselves on the warm rocks behind her father's barn. She thought of the one she had waited out during her stalk exercise, the patient negotiation of territory. She thought of the silence before the strike. "Who picked this?" she asked. No one answered. But Dietz, passing behind her, muttered low enough that only she could hear. "Hale. After you qualified, said you move like one. Wait longer than anybody he ever saw." She folded the paper and put it in her pocket. The first time the platoon deployed as a unit, Tessa was not the center of attention. She was simply another sniper, one of 12, assigned to a reinforced infantry company in Helmand Province, Afghanistan. The poppy fields stretched to the horizon, interrupted by mud-walled compounds and irrigation ditches. The heat was unlike West Texas, denser, wetter, carrying the scent of human waste and diesel. Her first confirmed kill came on a Tuesday. The patrol had walked into an L-shaped ambush, the crack of AK-47 fire shattering the afternoon stillness. Tessa was positioned on a rooftop 200 meters east, covering the patrol's flank. Through her scope, she saw the muzzle flash, third-story window, northwest corner of a half-constructed building. The insurgent was firing downward directly into the exposed position of a Marine fire team. She acquired. She breathed. She fired. The muzzle flash did not repeat. The corpsman dragged the wounded Marine to cover. And he survived. Later, Tessa would learn his name, Lance Corporal Martinez, 22 years old, father of a daughter he had never met. She did not attend the award ceremony. She did not seek him out. She simply cleaned her rifle, checked her zero, and prepared for the next patrol. The nickname began informally. The infantry grunts in Bravo Company noticed that when the situation was most dire, when the fire was heaviest, when the squad leader was screaming for support, the shots from the sniper overwatch were always precise, always lethal, and always came from a position they could not identify. "Where the hell is she?" they'd ask, scanning the ridge line, the rooftops, the irrigation ditch. The answer was always the same. Nobody knew. She was there, her rounds impacting, and then she was gone, leaving behind only the spent brass and the silence. "It's like the desert coughed her up," one sergeant said, and then swallowed her back down. The call sign spread from the platoon to the company, from the company to the battalion. Desert Serpent. When Tessa returned from a 7-day observation post, her face caked with cam paint and her eyes hollow from sleep deprivation, she found the words stenciled in neat block letters on her rifle case. She did not ask who had done it. She did not remove it. She was not invincible. She was not immune to fear. On her third month in country, an IED detonated 50 meters from her hide site, the shockwave concussing her against the wall of a compound. She lost hearing in her left ear for 6 days. She did not report it. She did not request rest. She simply adjusted her positioning so her good ear faced the danger area and continued her observation shift. When the battalion psychiatrist interviewed her as part of a routine combat stress screening, she answered his questions with monosyllables and a flat effect that he noted in his report as atypical but not clinically significant. She was not cold. She was not broken. She had simply learned, long before she ever fired a rifle for her country, that survival required compartmentalization. The girl who had wept over a field-dressed doe at age 12 was still present somewhere. But that girl was not needed in Helmand Province. What was needed was the crosshair, the breath, the fraction of stillness between heartbeats. The end of her deployment arrived without fanfare. As she flew back to Camp Pendleton on a charter 747 filled with Marines sleeping in their seats, their weapons stowed in overhead bins, the cabin lights dimmed to simulate night. Tessa did not sleep. She stared out the window at the darkness over the Pacific and tried to reconcile the woman she had become with the girl who had left. The transition was not smooth. She struggled with crowds, with loud noises, with the casual intimacy of friends who wanted to touch her shoulder or embrace her. She spent her first weekend back at her father's house in West Texas, sitting on the porch, watching the mesquite trees sway in the hot wind. Her father did not ask about Afghanistan. He did not ask about the kill count she carried like shrapnel in her chest. He simply brought her coffee each morning, left it on the rail beside her chair, and then sat in the adjacent rocker with his own mug, staring at the same horizon. On Sunday evening, as the sun bled orange across the scrub, he spoke without looking at her. "Your mother used to say I came back from Vietnam and never came home. She wasn't wrong. I was here. I wasn't present." He paused. "You're not me." Tessa said nothing. "You're gonna carry this every day. It won't get lighter, but you'll get stronger." He stood, drained his coffee, and walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the screen. "I always knew you'd hit what you looked at. I just didn't figure it'd be this." He went inside. Tessa remained on the porch until the stars emerged, cold and distant, the same stars that had guided her across 6 kilometers of hostile territory. She thought about the young men she had killed. She thought about Lance Corporal Martinez, alive, reading bedtime stories to his infant daughter. She thought about Staff Sergeant Hale, retired now, living in Montana with his wife and his memories. She did not know if she had made a difference. She did not know if the sum total of her violence had advanced any cause or secured any freedom. What she knew was this: when the call had come, she had answered. When her country had asked for her body and her skill and her willingness to sit in the dirt and wait, she had not refused. She was still waiting. For what, she did not yet know. The moment that transformed Tessa Marchetti from an anomaly into a legend began not with a shot fired, but with a room full of men who had never seen her shoot. It was 3 years after her first deployment. She had completed 2 more combat tours that accumulated a confirmed kill count that placed her in the top echelon of active-duty snipers and been quietly recommended for a Bronze Star with Valor, an award she attempted to decline, unaware that the paperwork had already been approved. She was now a sergeant, the senior female scout sniper in the Marine Corps, though she never used that title and visibly flinched when